Welcome to The Unfiltered Truth with Dr. Bridgette, author, speaker, podcaster, and licensed therapist. She's a truth teller, a barrier breaker, and a change maker, bringing you real conversations that inspire growth and transformation. But first, a quick note. Any stories or incidents shared here are general in nature and not specific to any individual. This podcast is for education only and not counseling. No specific advice will be given during the show. All inquiries should be sent by email for response. All professional and educational insights are given with the scope of Dr. Bridgette's expertise and based on latest research in mental health and related fields. Now, let's dive into today's conversation.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Unfiltered Truth Talk Show host. And today, I'm really going to be kind of bringing the truth here on our podcast. We have a new guest today, and I'm really excited to bring him on. But here we go. We talk about real conversations, real people, and people really doing real things within our community, really good impacts. So if you're watching by live or if you're doing by podcast, welcome. Tonight, we're going to focus on leadership, education, and community impact. And so today, I have a guest that he's on, and his name is Nick Ignacio, and he's actually running for school board. And I want to welcome him on our very first podcast tonight. Welcome, Mr. Nick Ignacio.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams, and I'm truly honored to be here on your show, especially being the first guest. It's a huge deal. I'm super honored.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, understand that you are running for office, but now you and I, we kind of know each other, but we don't know each other. But I know this is not the very first board that you've ever ran for. Give us a little bit of background or bio about you.
Yeah, so I'm 40 years old, Catholic, Christian, married, conservative. I have always voted Republican, but I don't consider myself Republican anymore. I think both parties are doing some bad stuff. They're not really representing people. So I'm being 40, that's right around the time when people typically begin to get into politics. I started very young, like at 33, which is kind of primordial. And so I kind of dipped my feet in there. I ran in a Republican primary against Bobby Orrock. And so he beat me pretty soundly, which would be expected. He's a tough incumbent. He's been there for a long time, near 40 years at this point. So, and then
isn't it 30 something? When about 30 something years? I think he's been in 36, 32, somewhere up in there. He's been a delegate.
Yeah, he's approaching 40. Well, it's got to be. It really has to be in at least mid 30s. Okay. Large in part. So and just briefly on Bobby, I don't have an issue with him. There's been a couple gun bills he threw out that were not pro Second Amendment that really got some people upset, myself included at the time. Since then, he ended up rescinding one of those bills. He's done a pretty decent job. So one thing that people are concerned about is that tenure, just being nearly 44 decades, is a lot. But so anyways, I primaried against him. I got my teeth kicked in, as you might expect. It wasn't even a grassroots; it was a garage campaign, right?
Right.
I had $5,000. The guy spent $200,000 against me. I mean, just totally smothered me. But you know what? I took my 20%, and I was happy with it. I learned a lot from that race. Then the next race, which is really going to be close, the one that I'm really watching, which is very closely associated to this race. I ended up running for Board of Supervisors in the Battlefield District. Now, that was 4 years.
When was that? When was that, though?
4 years ago. Now, the interesting thing was I ran against two incumbents, how does that even happen? I'll explain to you how that happens. So Chris Yakubowski, who had the Republican nomination, and so that by law puts him on top of the ballot. Whoever's on top of the ballot has a distinct advantage.
That's true.
So then I'm running against Chris, and then I was second on the ballot, and then I have Barron Braswell, who was the sitting school board person at the time. So I'm running against two incumbents both elected officials in the Battlefield District, and I'm in the center of them. And the race was actually ended up being pretty close. So I was very happy with that, even though I had all the odds against me, totally all the odds against me. So then about 2 years ago, I ran for clerk of court. I ran an extremely powerful, once again, incumbent, Christy Jett. She's a great lady. She does a good job. I'm happy she won. Sometimes you got to challenge people, keep them on their game, keep them appreciating their position. She does a good job.
And hold up. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Now I do remember you when you was running, and there was some major controversy in reference to about some ballots. Yep. And I have a question for you, and I really want to know the unfiltered truth here. Yep. What made you pull that ballot together the way you did it? Now, I do understand the guy, and I'm going to have him on as a guest as well, my man, Steve Maxwell, running for sheriff. I understand that, we know that when you are working for the government, you cannot really be a Republican nor a Democrat. You have to go basically as an independent. Now, I really want to understand what made you do what you did with that ballot. And number two, would you consider that ballot then at that time to be illegal?
Okay, so first of all, what you're referencing is the Hatch Act, which is...
Yes, that's it. I couldn't think of the word right now. Yeah.
I got you. This is what I do. So the Hatch Act, which prevents you, depending on the category you're in, from receiving a party nomination, not endorsement, but nomination, because there's a huge difference between a nomination and endorsement. So getting to the sample ballots, it's really funny because, so these sample ballots, to answer your question number one, was there anything wrong with them legally? Absolutely not. And I'll tell you, so the funny thing is, during the time, the news was like, hey, these are controversy, hey, they're confusing, hey, they're all these things. Well, after the election, the state will look at any possible violation, and someone reported that, right? And so it goes to a committee that looks at things. So after the news was saying, hey, these ballots are confusing, they're controversial, the committee ruled, guess what? What we already knew, that they were completely legal, completely lawful. And actually, one of the people who was in the committee, it's Republicans and Democrats. She was a Democrat. She was the chairperson. She looked at it and she said, yeah, that it's completely legal. So, and it's actually really smart. What it was it clearly said sample ballot. I was an independent. We were all independents. And so if you were a Democrat, one side would say, here's a sample ballot if you vote Democrat, and this who we would recommend. This will help you vote, right? If you're a Republican, then these are your Republicans, and here's who we'd recommend you vote for.
Right.
So it was simply a recommendation. Would I do it again? I probably wouldn't, only because it confused a lot of people. People were thinking, oh, that this is saying, we're endorsed or we're nominated, when that's not at all what it meant. It clearly said it's a sample ballot. A sample ballot is simply that. You can create a sample ballot and say, I want you to vote for Michael Jackson all the way down the line.
Exactly.
So would I do it again?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to be honest. Well, no, let me be honest with you. When I saw the ballot, I ain't going to lie, I said, man, that was an ingenious idea. It was a really good idea. But would I call it illegal? I'm going to say absolutely was not an illegal ballot, because the ballot really, it had everybody's candidate on it. And as far as I was concerned, I thought it was a pretty ingenious idea, but I know it created a lot of controversy and people had their panties in a wad about it. I'm just being honest. And you like you said, would I do it again? Probably not, because obviously it brought a lot of controversy to the point where there was an actual interviewer out there that was interviewing people about the ballot. And I just think some people just got their panties in a wad and they got them in a wad for no reason. It was totally unnecessary. And I want to ask you something else. Let's just kind of go backwards here a little bit. You say that you are, you're not really an independent. Well, correction, you're not a Republican, nor are you a Democrat. you are basically an independent. And I want to understand, because I probably can identify with you, and I know where you're going to go with this. What made you change?
Sure. So under state law, Virginia state law, school board is the one position where you absolutely have to be independent. Like you have to be classified as that. It's unlike any of the other things on the ticket. You can still receive an endorsement, but you can't even receive a nomination. It's the only race you cannot. I have always voted conservative. People who know me know I am hardcore, proud conservative. This is a great country. We're not perfect. We're making it better every day. Mm-hmm. But I have seen things from the Republican Party on the local and higher level that have just been egregious. And even if you think about it on the national level, Trump, who is super conservative, he's a Republican. The Republican Party has done him dirty multiple times. It's just, it is so political within the Republican Party. It has pushed voters away. It's disenfranchised voters. People who are there, I keep finding, especially with the newer generation, how they are still conservative, but they do not want to say they are flat out Republican. That being said, I have always voted Republican. Mm-hmm. My views have never aligned with a Democrat. But you would just be shocked just how many people just say the Republican Party is just not representing the conservative movement like it should nowadays.
Okay, so let me, I'm going to make a comment here. You're saying that Trump is a super conservative. No, he was not. He was a Democrat. He was a Democrat. He was a Democrat. I'm going to be honest, unfiltered truth. He was a Democrat, and I heard him say many a times I've heard him say that that he ran, and I know we already know he ran as a Republican because he knew he could get those votes. But he was not a conservative. He was not that. Like I mean, truth be told, I am an independent now. I've always have somewhat voted as a conservative, and I still have conservative views, but yet I don't even go towards the Republican Party anymore, because the way I saw, I felt like that whole election piece, what we're talking about, was a bloodbath. And it was just rotten in the way I saw things. I said, if this is the case, then I'm going to be an independent. I'd rather vet people on both sides versus me going and being an actual straight up Republican. I do not want to be beholden to anybody's party, because you're not going to hold my feet to the fire, straight up. So I think it's kind of community. You and I, we kind of think the same because of what happened, and we already know exactly what happened. But I'm not trying to go in that path. But I do want to ask you another question. What do you believe that you think that's best, that's going to serve you, basically to serve the students and the families if you were to win?
So getting back to the interesting thing about this race is finally I have all the advantages. I've always had all the disadvantages. I'm going into this almost like I'm the incumbent. Everyone knows who I am. I know what I'm doing. We have to, hold on.
Nick, we're going to have to take a break. We're going to have to put things on hold. We have to take a break for right now and let the audience know, and we'll be right back here in a few seconds.
Sometimes you got to step back from the world and get lost in a book.
Discover Dr. B's latest books, The Shepherd's Pie and OK Honey, available now on Amazon and other retail locations. Grab your copy today.
Welcome back. Go ahead, Mr. Nick.
So in this race, it's funny because the news has been friendly towards me. They gave me quote of the week, which is crazy. And
really?
So, yes. So instead of the news being against me, the news is friendly towards me, or at least unbiased. They're liking what I say because they've given me the quote of the week, so they've run it. I'm almost like the incumbent because everyone knows who I am. They know where I stand. I have the experience going into this race. I've been able to maneuver and think about kind of like a boxing match. You can have an opponent who comes out swinging hard, but you can outbox them in terms of you just know what you're doing and you're scoring all the points. And even though they're looking tough, this race, I've come out on top. In other words, it feels like this race is mine to lose. Going in right off the bat, one of the things that separates me from my opponents is they don't give straight answers. They waffle. They don't know what they're doing. It's word salad. It doesn't make any sense to anyone.
Sound like last night's debate.
It absolutely.
I'm sorry. I have to be honest about that one.
And we can get into all that too. But here everyone knows I'm conservative. And here's another great thing, because I've built a reputation of whether or not you agree with me or not on a topic, you know that I'm going to follow through with what I agree on. I'm not going to waffle. I'm not going to, say certain things to certain groups to try and get their support. One of my biggest things is I will not allow men to go into girls' bathrooms, locker rooms, sports. It's not going to happen. There's a whole bunch of different ways that we're going to go about making sure that doesn't happen.
Tell me how.
Well, so first of all, we're gonna have a complete ban on that. It's going to be we're not going to allow it.
Hold up, brother. I want to jump in here for a moment.
Okay.
So you're trying to tell me that you're going to do a complete ban, but you got to remember, if you're running for the board, you ain't the only person sitting on the board. You know that. So you now have to make sure that you convince other people to come on that board to go along with what you're trying to say. But you must understand that whole board. I don't get into the school board thing, but I'm going to get into it tonight. Now, we have people that seriously, they may not even be conservative. So therefore, they may say, you know what, bro, you can say whatever you want to say, but we ain't going that way. How are you going to deal with that? Because you know what? I've watched some of those board meetings at night, and they can really turn into crap shows. And you're going to have to be ready to go into the boxing match and fight that. Tell me how.
Sure. Well, everyone knows I'm the human hand grenade. So when I say something, I'm gonna follow through on it. If I have to go to the sheriff's department and say, hey, I want to instruct you to talk to these SROs, let's go with that angle. And I want an SRO in every single school, no matter what, when it's open to the time that school's closed. Sometimes our SROs, because of manpower, they have to be shared between different schools. I want an SRO in every single school while that school is in session. So I have already spoken to enough of who we're going to have on the board. For instance, I have gotten Rich Lieberman on quote, and he's running for Lee Hill, and he and I certainly don't always get along, but he at least he'll at least back the same thing in terms of no males in girls' bathrooms or sports. So we're going to have enough to push that through. Now the board is completely unbalanced. It is super left leaning at this point. And if I get elected, I'm telling you right now, I will be the only conservative on that board, only true conservative. It's going to be tough, and that's fine. I'm up for the challenge. People know I'm up for the challenge. I'll lead an army or I'll stand against one. It doesn't matter. What I believe in is what we're going to push forward with. I will not allow men in girls' bathrooms. That will be the vote. If I have to, I'll work together with other people to push things that they want to get through, as long as they'll help me get that protection for these girls in these locker rooms. So I'll navigate with other people. They call that log. They call that log rolling in Congress, which is, hey, listen, I'll work with you on this bill or this proposal. If you work with me on this one, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I don't want these men going into girls' bathrooms. And another thing is, even if nothing happens, the fact that these girls are uncomfortable, they're still being victimized. This should be a place that they can go to and feel safe. If you allow these sort of things, I just want to let someone else know. If you go, okay, well, if you identify as a male, you can use these bathrooms and locker rooms. You still have contractors going into these schools. You have other personnel going into these schools. It's not just students. So,
okay, all right. So let me jump in here. Let's go down this rabbit hole down. So that so when we're talking about men going into women's bathrooms or boys going into girls' bathrooms, are we talking about the transgendered folks? Who are we speaking of? Because, I'm going to be honest that that is actually like 1% of that population. So now, number two. So I hear you keep speaking that, but I want to know, I haven't heard lately of any major controversies of someone going into the female's bathroom and that there's been some major issues. I may not be as up to date on some of this information because, again, my kids are grown. Now, transgender, they only make up around about that the LGBTQIA, they only make up like about 1% of the population. But I got a question.
Okay.
So I'm curious to know, unless there has been something that I don't know about in our district area, when was the last time have we had an issue where a male went into the female's bathroom here in our area and that assaulted a female?
So to date, in our area, in our schools, I don't think we've had an issue like that come up. And that's why I need to get up there to prevent that from happening. I don't want to be reactive. I want to be proactive on it. And we have had those issues come up in many places in the state. We've had issues with men going in and girls actually going into boys' bathrooms. And in this state. So, I mean, I can't pull up and put the articles up. We have had those issues, but not to that degree or anything like that in our county. But that's why I'm going to get up there and prevent that.
Okay, so here we go. Here we go. Also, instead of us really focusing in on, because I'm going to be honest, I think some topics are just nothing to me but springboard topics that we just keep bringing up because we hear it in the news as well. And so we'll bring that up because we think what other people want to hear, or this is the topic that we should be talking about. Let's shift the gears here. Let's talk about the budget. Let's talk about us. I remember we used to have resource police officers in our schools. I noticed those were pulled. I want to know, how are you going to protect our schools? We're getting schools that are getting shot up. And look, don't get me wrong. I am a Second Amendment person. However, I believe the gun violence in our country has gotten completely slammed out of control. And yet I'm going to keep it real. I am not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. But I notice Republicans will come up with their mouths talking about, oh my gosh, and my Second Amendment rights. I'm cool, have a gun. But guess what? We cannot deny the fact that right now people are getting killed on a regular basis in schools. What is your plan for that? How do you plan to do that?
I want an SRO in every single school while it's open. I know that's a big ask. We're going to ask for that budget. We're going to ask that if we can't pay it directly, I want to ask that we're going to talk to the sheriff's department about seeing what they can do to hire enough. That's the only way we can do this. I kind of go back to Israel when I think about how they are super proactive. They are not reactive. You'll often get a lot of candidates who will say, oh, I'll be proactive, but they're never proactive. Right. I want an SRO in every school, not an SRO, who's going back and forth to a couple of schools because we don't have enough manpower. I want one in every single school. And unfortunately, and it pains me to have to even say this, but I want metal detectors in every school. It really actually makes me sad to have to say that. But life and safety is the biggest priority. Honestly, it's upsetting to me to have to say that, but I think we're at the point now in our society where we also need metal detectors in every school and someone trained who knows how to use them so that it's quick and efficient as these kids go through. You can actually calibrate those machines to not pick up on small pieces of metal, but larger pieces of metal that would be a gun.
Okay. Now, like I said, I've watched a few times. I've watched those board meetings, and they can become just nasty and violent, so unprofessional when they're handling disagreements. How do you plan to deal with that?
There was a time when I was a lot more brazen and bold, but that comes with age. I'm 40 now, so right. I kind of figure that's the time when it's time to be more diplomatic. But I still have that Nick Ignacio flair where if something's going crazy, I'll get my hands dirty. But we certainly can't have people shouting and talking over everyone. I'm a big fan of the old Robert's Rules of Order. I've studied it well. I'm going to use it well when I'm up there. Okay. I'm going to need another conservative up there so that at least if I have a motion, it can be seconded, and then that way it'll be heard. And quite frankly, it's very possible I will be the only conservative up there. But again, I'm a smart guy. People know, there's many things you can say about me, but I'm a pretty smart guy. And so I can figure out how to get my message across.
Okay. Well, Nick, we're going to have to kind of end our show. And, I really appreciate you coming on here. I really wish you the very best that you win in your seat. I think you'll make a great asset to that seat. But other than that, I really appreciate you coming on, and it was just a pleasure. And you know what? I may bring you back again.
All right. I appreciate it, Dr. Williams. Okay. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Well, I thank everyone for coming on the show, to sitting in and listening to what Mr. Nick Ignacio, what he has to say. If you're in his district, the Battlefield District, please make sure that you vote for him. Other than that, guys, you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Want Dr. B on your podcast, at your event, or for you to be featured on The Unfiltered Truth? Connect at thewilliamsempowermentcenter.com. Order her latest books, The Shepherd's Pie and OK Honey, on Amazon or wherever books are sold. Follow at Bridgette Y. Williams on IG and Dr. Bridgette Y. Williams Empowers on Facebook. See you next time.